Welcome to the Industry 4.0 podcast with Grantek.
Hi, and welcome to today's episode of the Industry 4.0 podcast with Grantek, where we deliver a look into the world of manufacturing with a focus on stories and trends that lead to better solutions. Our guests share tips and outcomes that are going to help you improve productivity. I'm your host, Sam Russum, and today I'm joined by my colleague at Grantek, Bryon Hayes. Bryon, thanks for joining me on the podcast today. Can I ask you to explain to our listeners what it is exactly you do here at Grantek?
Thanks, Sam. Yeah, I'm excited to be here, and sure, I'm happy to introduce myself. So I'm the Director of Smart Manufacturing Solutions at Grantek. I've got 20 years experience working in the life sciences industry, specifically in automation and information systems. At Grantek, I'm responsible for translating current trends in the life sciences landscape into actionable technical partnership opportunities, training plans, growth strategies, and products. I'm a member of the ISPE and the ISA. I'm on the ISPE Pharma 4.0 Special Interest Group, and within that group, I'm involved with the Impact and Maturity Subcommittee.
Cool. And then, hey, probably worth mentioning, you're on my team, right? So I run our Smart Manufacturing Solutions department, where we're all kind of focused on making these products and kind of these easy buttons for solutions in Industry 4.0 in general. And Bryon, you focus on the life sciences industry and work on my team to help bring solutions there.
That's correct.
Awesome. Cool. Well, hey, let's get started and dive into it. We do always like to start with the most broad question we could start with, which is, what is Industry 4.0 and what does that mean to you?
For me, it's kind of twofold. It's actually one answer, but that answer has two implications. The answer is, I think Industry 4.0 is breaking down barriers and silos in an organization. So, making the whole organization work towards a common goal. The IT group, the operations team, the engineering group, quality, validation, they're all not working in vacuums. They're working together. They're collaboratively making decisions. And those silos also exist in a lot of organizations with respect to data. So Industry 4.0 is also breaking down those silos, those data silos, which definitely helps with making decisions better. You've got a single source of truth that spans organizations, spans systems, and ties everything all together and allows you to make more informed decisions.
Yeah, and one of the things that I noticed that you kind of said in your answer there that maybe some of our listeners wouldn't expect is you actually didn't start with something that has anything to do with technology, right? Everything you kind of said in that first piece of this was all around kind of breaking down barriers and all kind of like people and process and that type of thing. And the data silos only kind of came for the second piece of that. So, I mean, I see that all the time too, where people get really over-focused on that technology piece of Industry 4.0 and might not kind of think about all of the other impacts and benefits kind of in the organization that you're looking to achieve there, right?
Yeah, that's right. It's Industry 4.0 is not just about technology. It's always, technology and using technology in the service of the organization, whether it's, business or cultural goals that the company's trying to achieve.
Yeah, for sure. And actually, and a great question to kind of direct over to you, right? Kind of bouncing off of that is around, so this is from an earlier question that we had from another guest that kind of came in, but they were asking around what Industry 4.0 means specifically for the pharmaceutical industry and how these trends in both the people, process, and the technology pieces of it have affected life sciences and pharmaceuticals specifically.
Sure. The industry is very focused on risk to the product, risk, compliance risk. And they've always been reluctant to introduce new technologies just because, of that, fear of risk. But, within the last, 5 years or so, it's been exponentially growing the use of Industry 4.0 type technologies. The ISPE created the Pharma 4.0 Special Interest Group to, look at how the Industry 4.0 pieces would fit in with the pharmaceutical quality program and manufacturing of quality products. And now you're starting to see lot of pilots and proof of concepts, and even, some organizations that have been doing Industry 4.0 before it was Industry 4.0 are looking at, even expanding on some of the stuff that they've been using for a while, and looking into more emergent technologies to help them out.
Yeah, for sure. And then, maybe to explain to some of our listeners too. So I heard you talking about how pharmaceuticals and life sciences are so focused on quality, right? That's one of the things that if I'm talking to my friends who don't work in manufacturing, they're always a little bit kind of surprised by that, right? But really it makes a lot of sense, right? And in life sciences and pharmaceuticals, for these medicines that we're putting into our bodies, right, there's a lot of regulation to make sure that you are making the right thing, the right way, the same way every single time, right? Just because that risk and kind of what can happen if something is just a little bit off is a little bit different if, for a cancer drug than it is a toy truck or something like that, right? So, I think that idea of quality and how that persists and is so such a core tenet of everything you kind of do in life sciences manufacturing is something that's interesting to a lot of people, and it's really kind of fascinating to think about how technology can really help to prove that general point again that you're making the same thing the same way every time.
That's right. Patient safety and product quality are paramount in the industry, so it's Industry 4.0 in pharma is looking for technologies that can help businesses manufacture better while keeping all of those those two central tenets in mind.
Yeah, and that's especially true kind of now, and as we're looking at the COVID-19 pandemic and kind of the huge explosion we've seen and focus around pharmaceuticals and life sciences kind of in that time, right? You have all these people that are still expected to produce these drugs with a much faster turnaround time than we have traditionally seen, and still kind of maintaining that quality standard. And the idea of doing that with a whole bunch of paperwork just seems so outdated these days, right? You're bringing in that Industry 4.0 technology to help out. So with that kind of in mind, what is the biggest challenge that you're seeing for the manufacturers that you're working with in life sciences today?
I think the biggest challenge I see with manufacturers is that they're really still in the early stages of getting their systems connected. They're still at that connectivity phase, I guess you would say. And if you look at the the spectrum of being like a fully autonomous plant to at the very, very, very advanced side versus having a bunch of islands of automation or even no automation at the least advanced side. They've got automation, they've got systems, they've got software. A lot of it hasn't been, connected yet. So they really need to, a lot of these companies are looking for ways to connect their systems to a central, network, and then be able to get that data out of those systems up into some, a historian or some other, data storage paradigm to be able to then use that data.
Yeah, for sure. Right. I like to think about it kind of like a car, right? So like if you buy a modern car, it is totally connected to itself, right? It has all of these data and all these systems flying around to control the car, but it doesn't really talk to any other cars, right? It's not talking to traffic systems or the highway or things like that, right? And even if it's talking to like a GPS, it's going through a human medium like you to actually have that, change the way the car is going, right? So a lot of manufacturing plants work the same way. You get all this equipment that comes in. The equipment's connected to itself and knows how to talk to itself, but it's just a part of a much larger system, a production line and warehousing and all sorts of things, right? So getting all of these different systems to talk to each other to support the common goal and things like that, like that's really what we're talking about when we say islands of automation, this thing that like itself is very well controlled and very intelligent, but is not necessarily connected and talking to all the other parts of the system, right?
Yeah.
Cool. So what's the first case study that comes to mind for you when we're thinking about Industry 4.0 and where you've seen that make like a really positive impact for a real customer?
Sure. Well, actually, the first case study that comes to mind is a project or a new facility actually that we helped a customer build, 15 or over 15 years ago. So this is like it was doing Industry 4.0 type of technologies before their Industry 4.0 was a thing, right? Before it was named and became marketed and so on. So in this case, the client was building a new site. they had a site that they wanted to base this new site off of, but that site was like an islands of automation type of a site, and they wanted connectivity. They wanted to connect the plant to their ERP system. They had just rolled out SAP, and they thought, why do I want my operators, performing an action and having to go to a terminal, punch a bunch of stuff into SAP? I want to be able to move materials around with the push of a button. They also wanted to remove as much paper as they could. At that time, there wasn't, they couldn't go completely paperless, but there were opportunities for them to eliminate some of the papers that were typically fly around in a pharmaceutical plant. And then they just wanted to break that boundary between manufacturing and the IT world. And, so we used an early Rockwell product at the time to connect their PLCs and the SCADA systems up to their ERP. So the level 0, 1, and 2 up to level 4. This allowed the operators on the plant floor to, they could click on a wireframed image of a bin. They would call that bin, which in the back, the back wires would connect to the ERP system, find the empty bin, connect to the system, and interface to the AGV to pick up that bin. And all of this was happening behind the scenes. Their ASRS system, they also had an ASRS system, and it was connected. It was a completely automated plant, connected all levels of the stack together. It was built 15 years ago. It's still going strong. And, actually comparing to that other sister plant, which is all manual, there's 2 to 3 times more productive, and all of the product coming out of it is high quality.
Oh, that's awesome. And it's great to have those kind of numbers in the comparison to another plant there too. I think it's really interesting that kind of, as we're talking about Industry 4.0 in this case, that we're spanning everything that seems simple and kind of a no duh, everybody should be doing that in terms of taking paper and putting it on glass, right? I think that's a lot of people would be shocked to kind of know how much paperwork is still flying around on these plant floors, right? When really we do have digital options for a lot of that. But at the same time that we're talking about, these paper forms should go into tablets and computer terminals, you're also talking about AGVs, automated guided vehicles, and ASRSs, right? Automatic storage retrieval systems, these huge robotics, complex systems that were really pretty unthinkable, just a couple of decades ago. So it is kind of interesting kind of that part of this is that type of computerization, iPhone, iPad, the human interaction piece, but it is also this tie to big, heavy industrial robotics and sensors. And it is that AI cloud piece of things too. It can really cover a lot of ground. And you said you did this 15 years ago too, right? I think that's a little bit further back than a lot of people think of when they think Industry 4.0.
Yeah, we borrowed a lot of technologies from other industries. AGVs were used at the time a lot in food and beverage and automotive, of course. So the customer was really focused on efficiencies, and so they weren't afraid to look at some of the technologies used in other industries and deploy them, inside their own 4 walls, as long as we were able to ensure the product quality and patient safety, right?
Yep.
And we definitely succeeded there. So
cool. That's awesome. And okay, so next kind of question around Industry 4.0 and what is the appeal to those executives, right? What are the people that are kind of making those decisions, deciding where to invest their money? What is it around the Industry 4.0 technologies that really piques their interest?
I think, focusing on the pharmaceutical industry, it's, shorter time to market is probably the biggest one, especially right now with, as you said earlier, the pandemic and trying to get products released and manufactured and ready to go, so that as early as possible. And of course, the executives are always thinking about dollars. And so efficiencies gained too by implementing those technologies. And then of course, right first time quality is a big one. Producing as little scrap as possible. Eliminating manual error is another big one. Democratization of decision making. This all kind of sounds like buzzwords or buzz phrases, but all of these things translate into money earned earlier or spending less money And so executives are always focused on that bottom line, right? And so that type of stuff appeals to them.
Yeah, and along those lines, right? You're right. There's a bunch of buzzwords out there, like kind of all of these tools that we have to solve problems, but that kind of is the key, right? We're not just doing this for fun. I like to say it is kind of fun sometimes. Sometimes it's fun, but we're doing this to solve real problems and kind of improve businesses, right? So where are those buzzwords? Where are those technologies? When we're applying those, what problems are really getting solved today with these types of Industry 4.0 technologies?
Yeah, and I mean, the engineer in me gets excited thinking about robots and connectivity and all that stuff. And but yeah, it's the problems that are getting solved are for the customers. The people out on the plant floor or the people in their offices is getting access to their data they either know they have or they don't know that they have it. That, and going back to the point about improving digital maturity, these guys, they want one place where they can go and they can see how their manufacturing site is performing. And part of that is knowing, what they have and what they need, and, getting what they have to a place where they can get this data and use it and do something smart with it. 90% of the questions I get asked, by customers is, how do I get the data up to where I need it? And then once I get that data there, how do I use it most effectively? And so that's really the problem that we're helping our customers solve.
Yeah, see, and it sounds kind of broad, but it actually does really resonate with kind of me and a lot of what I see too, right? I mean, in any business, from the manufacturers that we work with to even our own business, right? I think that people always want better data faster to be making more informed decisions, right? And in these environments that are constantly changing too, right? One Industry 4.0 project might affect the data that you're getting from another. So it is this continuous process of updating systems and increasing that visibility to make more decisions about the next upgrade that you're going to get, which is going to get you better visibility and help you make better decisions. And it's this cyclical thing that we're doing to continuously improve all of our businesses and manufacturing operations. And Bryon, one thing that we always like to ask our guests is to pay it forward a little bit and try to ask a question for one of our future guests who's going to be on the show, and maybe answer some of your little curiosities as well, right? So what do you want to hear us talk about on the podcast? What should I ask some future unsuspecting victim?
Well, Sam, I think I want to learn about the impact of machine learning in the manufacturing industry. So I'd like to ask the person, how has machine learning impacted them in their sphere of influence? And if it's a manufacturer, have they started to leverage elements of machine learning? And how has it been received in the organization?
Yeah, great question. Get a lot of buzz around machine learning. Always looking for kind of more examples of times that people have really used it and seen real results. So I'm looking forward to going down and tracking down a guest that can help us answer some of those questions. Cool. Well, that was great. Thanks a lot for being able to join me on the podcast, Bryon. I hope that all of our listeners enjoyed. You had some really great insights. And it's great to hear that life sciences perspective on the Industry 4.0 domain.
All right. Well, thank you for having me. It was great to be here.
Yeah, awesome. So thanks everybody for listening. We would love to hear from you. So follow Grantek on LinkedIn, stay up to date with all the things that we're doing. Subscribe to the Industry 4.0 podcast with Grantek, wherever you do get your podcasts. Email any questions and feedback or any thoughts that you have on Industry 4.0 to info@grantek.com. And please be sure to join us next time on the Industry 4.0 podcast with Grantek. Thanks for listening.